so Jonathan asked me to choose the word for this month, and I thought a little bit about the season that we're in. It will be November soon, 2020, so I don't have to tell you what that means. Vote early, vote often. And and I've been, we're what? Are we 8 months into? No, we're like maybe 7 months into real kind of how we've been living into this pandemic now. I gauge that based on how old my twins are, because about a month after they were born was when everything kind of shut down. So I was thinking about, this time in our lives and connection, because I think that we have never been so disconnected, and we've never needed connection maybe more than we do now, although we always need connection. I mean, I think as human beings, we are made for connection. Jesus reminds us of that, not only in his call this week we'll hear in our lectionary to love God with all our heart, mind, and soul, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And that love calls us into community and connection. But two, with the table, I mean, the communion table calls us to real, authentic connection. I can't think of a place where I connect better with people than over a meal. And I'm guessing that many of us have not shared a meal with that many people recently, especially not people who are different or different thinking from us. And I think that is what makes this time so disconnected. That, and I think the more we kind of hole in our houses, the harder it is to get back out. Like, I think as much as we desire to be with one another, the longer we're isolating, the harder it gets to de-isolate. And I'm not saying that I don't think that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. We need to. I mean, we are hitting the second wave, and the pandemic of what was it? The Spanish influenza. The second wave was where the most deaths happened. So, history tells us that in not connecting physically, we're doing the right thing. That doesn't make it easier. And I don't know if it doesn't make it right or wrong. It just means that we are called to make a greater effort to connect. And I think of people like Brene Brown, who talks about the fact that it's hard to hate people up close, that we need to move in closer. And so I think for today, I just wanted to wonder aloud with all of you about how it is that we can creatively connect with one another more so. And maybe too, what is calling you, driving you forward to connect, like being here this afternoon. So those are kind of my wonderments and my thoughts. And Jonathan, I will invite you to respond and share. He might have fallen asleep.
I think he's frozen.
He might be frozen.
It does look like he's frozen.
Yeah.
Right, it does.
He hasn't moved for a while, so.
Oh, I'm the host now. All right.
Okay.
This is truly holy chaos then.
It's okay.
What did you say about connectedness?
Perfect.
I mean, it
was.
Yeah.
Well, it's just evidence of how hard it is right now for all of us to connect.
It is.
So true.
Have any this may not be on the subject, but I'm finding it as you're talking because of some things about being connected to self. I don't know how to verbalize this. In addition to outward connectedness, there's this part of me that I realize inside it feels very fragmented.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's part of what this period has been too, is reconnecting that internal self.
I find too
What
that
were you gonna
I'm
say?
getting more connected to God,
Mm.
mainly because I guess I have more time to pray, to read, to study, to do the things that help me to be connected to God, and more so.
I think that's
June,
true for me
you were going
too.
to say something. What were you going to say?
Me?
Hmm.
Yeah. At the same time that we're more disconnected, we're disconnected from lots of people. But what I'm noticing is that the Spirit of God is connecting people in interesting, strange, and mysterious ways, and tugging at people's hearts in different ways, and allowing us time. God can work better with us as individuals when we're alone. So, as much as I used to be a really big extrovert and running all around and liked to, get lost in the midst of oodles of people, I think that we've disconnected from our spiritual selves in the process of becoming so socially oriented. Does that make any sense?
Mhm.
So we have opportunity, like you said, to come into a closer personal relationship with God, and also pay attention to who he's connecting and what he's up to something good. As much as I'm just believing he's in control and he's up to something good.
Well, and what I've found too is we're so isolated, but yet it almost makes when we can connect, like here on Chaos or Prayer for Eight, such a cherished time. And it makes it so valuable, where probably a year ago, you wouldn't think twice about, oh yeah, I talked to somebody on the phone, or I ran into so-and-so at the grocery or whatever. But now it's so deliberate and so important.
Yeah, I was telling Jonathan yesterday that like when they opened up a new coffee shop in my neighborhood, and it's like the highlight of my day when I get to go, because I'm so excited to see people and I don't even know them, and we just for as long as is safe, with the little plexiglass and our masks on, we chat and talk. And I think when I take my mask off and come in here in however many months, these people aren't even going to know who I am. And two, like, I think as soon as it's safe, as soon as that we get the go ahead, I think I'm just going to hug like every person I see, like just random strangers. I can't wait. So June, you really spoke to me in that, because I think you're right. We have been for so long. And I think Zoe and Sally, you were speaking this too, or Jan, for so long, we've just been go, 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 go. This time has given many of us, more so others than some, like maybe myself who has small children, time to be in quiet contemplation with God, and connect back to that spirit. And it really, I think, speaks to like the movement of Richard Rohr, who is big on the Center for Action and Contemplation, because the contemplation calls us to action. So while that connecting back to the spirit is core and important, it then, as June was saying, calls us to these new connections. The spirit is making this very holy work in the midst of us and drawing us, I hope, back out into the chaos, but with that deep connection to the holy, to the divine that is in the center of ourselves, and allows us not to get swept away in that rapid current that sometimes is our day-to-day lives. So
I love that observation, Kate, because it kind of breaks down any either or tug of war between being with people or being alone. Like the gifts that God gives us in contemplation kind of retunes us for our other relationships and connections. Because we all know that even if like me, it's sometimes hard to articulate. We all, I think, intuitively know that there's like there are different qualities. Connection is giving issues, and so the quality is a little weird. But like being with people can feel life-giving and restorative, and there are also kind of cheap kinds of connection. If you ever think of like, I know one of my favorite authors, Priya Parker, writes about gathering well, and she talks about how many times there are these national or international gatherings of experts in a given field or discipline, and they totally waste the time together. They don't make good use of it, right? Like they just put the same predictable PowerPoint agenda on the wall, and you could have predicted it from no matter what your background was, even if you had nothing to do with that world of experts, that worldwide experts. If you had nothing to do with that group, you could still predict the order of things, because it's not engaged with a kind of, like Jan was talking about, a deep connection to the self, and in a discerning connection with each other about what they would really like to get out of their time together. So that's just to say that the interplay, I think, is just so important. It's not one or the other. Desmond Tutu reminds us, like, his great African word Ubuntu, that we are only selves at all in community. So there's no sense in like imagining that we're our true selves extracted from, but it gives us this kind of time of perspective and recalibration to bring back into our relationships so that we can have connections of deeper value, however we define that.
I am because we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have been taking time to think about things that I've not really, people and situations that I really never took time to contemplate. I had always ministered to people who were shut in at home, alone, without other people. My parents had me do that from the time I was a young girl. Go and take food to this lady and go and take flowers to this one. And, so that was very ingrained in me to take care of orphans and widows in their distress, because I did a lot of free babysitting too. So it was that kind of neighborhood. And I really appreciate that upbringing. Then, I got older and I just kind of did that thing because you do that thing. And then I had some times in my life when I became a shut-in, at home alone. You said you have twins at home. And, I had 4 children. My twins came last. And so I didn't become a quote unquote stay-at-home mom until after the twins were born. And that was I looked at as was a real stretching time for me in my life. We moved out in the country. I had never lived out in the country. The driveway was 1.5 miles long. I couldn't even go walk to get the mail because I had all these kids at goofy hours, and So I experienced being completely alone, and I forgot all about that until now. And parenting, my husband worked a lot of extra hours, so to cover the bills because I couldn't work. And I just think about all these single moms all over that are having to deal with this, and trying to figure out their income and taking care of the house and having those children and nobody being able to help support them in that. And then how, they just bust out of their homes and go and be with people in places because they have to. And they get looked down upon and called, whatever, they aren't, people are judging them and not saying, what can I do? How can I? And yet as a mom and a grandma, I don't know when to call my kids, because when I call, they're never available. They're too busy to talk. But at least if I call, they know I care, and they can hang up. But I don't know, it's just, and then I think about my, people who live in prison. Okay, so they live in these cells, rows and rows of people, and they're getting sick and they're not being allowed out. So, I go in a room of my house and I start cleaning, and I'm like, and I have to stay in here 24/7. And I think about isolation tanks that they put them in segregation. And I have to say, I have never thought about them before in that kind of way.
So even like the awareness of people with whom we may not know how to connect becomes a gift of this season, because it sort of sparks that imagination.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, what you talked about that Desmond Tutu said really spoke to me, because it made me realize that it's a dialectical relationship between being an individual and being part of a group. That one doesn't exist without the other. Because I've proven that I kind of struggle with the idea of just focusing on, and I don't know, being contemplative. So, but that puts it in perspective for me.
Good. I know there are lots of other ways to connect, but like connecting with God, self, and one another, others. When I think of connecting with myself, I always think of basketball coach, because that's where my mind goes most of the time. But Steve Kerr talks about the goal being for him being to like have 5 words that he knows that he is called to be about, and then to bring those 5 words to bear on everything he does, and as a team to have like 5 words, and then the challenge is the consistency of bringing those things to bear on everything you do. That's what makes an excellent team. And there are seasons I don't hold myself to like the same 5 words unchangingly, so I'll go back and revisit my 5 words and see that they have changed, so I don't mind changing the list. But joy and or laughter is always on there. Listening, generosity, gentleness. I want those things to be true of everything I'm a part of. But then there are days where I wake up and I'm like, I think I had a list. I'm not sure. And that's one of the gifts of the contemplative thing for me, is to be kind of brought back to have God's help bringing me back to who I am, so that I can kind of get going. And then the also beautiful work of constructing that kind of intention in community, as a community, so that they're not my words. We have our words, and then we commit to bring those. I think that's something of what the baptismal covenant is about.
I think that connection to God and self and community is so interesting. In marriage counseling, there's kind of this theory that we often create our knowledge of someone else in our own mind. our knowledge of who they are, what they think. Like if you're married or if you've been in any kind of significant relationship, you can probably relate to the idea that at one point or another, you've put you've put upon the other person how they will react or what they're thinking. When in reality, you don't actually know that. But I think that when we are in relationship, it's even like more deep than that. Then there's this other theory that there's this kind of third thing that comes out of the relationship of two people. And that third thing might be the divine. But that third thing might also be like the Ubuntu, like I am now really becoming myself because I am with you. So while I may have put on you what I think of you, you've done the same to me. And hopefully they're all about the goodness and the love that Desmond Tutu also speaks to the fact that we were made for goodness. We are created good. God said that it was good. And so I think that that's like the really lovely thing about connection is that it helps us connection with God, connection with others, kind of helps us come into the self more fully. The more we kind of give of ourselves and empty of ourselves, the more that the more we connect and the more we become who we are, which I think to me is kind of that idea of Ubuntu. And I think is maybe woo woo and out there, but is this
No,
yeah.
that makes sense.
So
The
but
word that comes, so go ahead, Kate.
go on.
I was going to say the word that comes to mind as you're talking about that is control, and like the opening my hand to control. So like we come with our ideas of what you mean to me or whatever, and that might be one of the things in this season is like we're disconnected physically in ways that we couldn't be, but then we discover new connections, like June was alluding to, an awareness to the single parents in my neighborhood or something like that, and the ways that I could be present. One of my favorite theologian writers, Willie Jennings, talks about studies that have shown that if a white man like me goes into a banquet hall and there are people just mingling around with the hors d'oeuvres and there are white people and black people in the room, I'm wired as a white person to assume connection is more likely with other white people. It's not true. I might have a lot more in common with, but we're not always the best at knowing what will make for good connection or anticipating where connection will happen, which is not a bad thing as long as I can stay open. It's like when I think that I am the best one at determining or anticipating or controlling what that connection will look like, that's where I experience the loss, right? That's where I don't open myself up to the new thing God might show me.
Yeah.
So this for me is like a really fascinating time of saying like, okay, so I don't get to connect with some people. Who are the people I've just like trained myself in my neighborhood to ignore? And I'm thinking back to what you were saying, and not ignore, but just like assume that connection would be more difficult, right? And going back to what you were saying, Kate, in 2020, my whole neighborhood is planted with signs and flags that want to encourage me to shape my imagination about what kind of connections are possible. I've been joking that it looks like the Bloods and the Crips outside. It's like red and blue and stuff. and I see that now, and I look at it now with different eyes. A month or so ago, it really discouraged me, and now I'm like, all right, God, like help me develop the imagination that would refuse this invitation to have my openness to connection. Like, in other words, I've been thinking about what kind of sign I would put in my front yard. I don't think I will, but if I was, it would be, we refuse to be enemies, and borrowing from someone else's story over in Palestine. But I'm going to stay open to connection. That's part of what I said yes to when I said yes to, or when my godparents said yes to for me to follow Jesus.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of that speaks exactly to what I chose for connection. I was having a dinner with some friends. There you go, the dinner table, outside, socially distanced, and we were, and we all had different political beliefs. And I said, this is it. This is the dream, that we can all share a beer, have a great time. Our kids can play. We can be together, because like Brene Brown says, it's hard to hate up close, and I think the enemy's goal is division, and so if the enemy's goal is division, then God's goal is connection. And I think that connection will help us fulfill the greatest commandment, to love God with all our heart, mind, and soul, as we love one another as ourselves. And so, I hope, my prayer for all of us is that we can have beer with people who we disagree with.
Can I add on to Kate's comment? If you can go on, last night, on a TV show I watched, the ending of it was an ad for the 2 men that are running for governor of Utah. And if there is anything in this whole thing I have ever had, this is not only, to me, holy connectedness, but what our future could hold. They are both on the same screen. One of them has a red tie, the other one has a blue tie, but they're talking about what the civility and relationship they have as, quote, human beings. They may differ on this or that. It was the most uplifting thing I have seen in years, not just this year, but it was one of those wholenesses that you just hold, that we were talking about, of what potential could really be. Anyway, the person ended, said it reminds him of the song, that we need a little Christmas. Well, we all need a little Utah in our lives, but it was such a magnificent surprise of civility and humanness that, number one, we don't have a personal time to be able to connect unless it's like this on Zoom or in small groups. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that for you to all be aware of and look for if you're interested, because I thought it was just phenomenally positive.
That's neat.
Maybe you'll have to send it to Jonathan and we'll post it on the page.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I guess I could go on the news station and they may have it on there. Yeah, we'll try.
Jonathan,
So
you said.
Oh,
Oh,
you go.
Can I? Okay. You said something about refusing to be enemies, and that reminded me of Reverend Mauer's on Sunday in his, or else it was in the, Sunday, in our Zoom service. And in his sermon, he said something about us and whatever, and that we're supposed to love our enemies and yada da da da, and at some point in time I asked, should we maybe be calling them our neighbors? And then I decided that I needed to look up the word neighbor in the concordance. And somewhere I had been taught that my neighbor was a person in need, whoever is in need or whatever. But I was floored if I saw this right, and I'd like somebody else to look in their concordance and let me know if I looked up the right words in the right order and all that you do. That it's people who are close to you. Really, it's neighbor the way we think. It's who's close to you, your fellow countrymen. And with what's going on in the United States right now, and knowing that there are, people who think we should divide, conquer, and all this kind of stuff and whatnot else. And or that the United States has become too big. I've heard this also. The United States is too big, we should divide again. And that thought just floors me. But you know, our neighbors really are who we're living with. And so that's our family, our family members, our neighbors. And we shouldn't be strangers in our own homes or communities, but it's hard to fight against that with this stuff. However, we have a huge blessing, social media, which has been like a curse to many families. But thank God for the people in the church who are turning it into holy connections for us.
Right.
Because I don't know where I'd be without the holy connections that I'm finding through social media. So that is a hidden blessing for us. And when the Spanish flu was going on, or when the Holocaust was going on, nobody had this. Nobody had this ability. We are more blessed than we know. What? I'm sorry. I'm done.
June, when you started to say, we're so blessed by, and then the last word I expected to hear out of your mouth was social media. But it's true, it's absolutely true. But because it has been such a, and it makes me think of just the great opportunity to, I mean, the word for Christians is always redemption, right? And it makes me think of Will Willimon, that very loud, brash Southern preacher who says that the problem with being a Christian is you never know if it's Good Friday or Easter morning, because you're never released from the belief, the hope, the possibility of redemption.
Really quickly, I would love to hear, like, June, I loved what you were speaking to about social media, the beauty that you found in it, in the connection. And I'm wondering if everybody would like to share, like, one thing that they have used to connect in a way that's really been grace-filled and meaningful during this time.
Should we just jump in?
Sure.
Well, I will have to echo what June said in that it's found on social media. And the first thing that comes to mind is we have a small group prayer that's been put together by church. And that's been a real blessing for both Terry and I, because it's 8 people that we knew but not well. And it's provided a wonderful blessing to us to get them, to know them better and see them in a different light, kind of with their hair down.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because Michael and I are in the Wednesday morning prayer group. And it has been a really incredible experience.
Even though this morning it was just Maria and I.
Oh.
But it was good.
Yeah.
It was good to have even to go through those things with another person. I during the summer got to participate in something with the Franciscan media that does a variety of things, deluges me with emails, but they did a 30-day thing on meditation, sensing God, and they posted every day on a particular Facebook page for that. So they would post, they were going through a book, but they at the same time they posted videos on every day. They'd post a video and a short thing about just the general practice of meditation, and that really helped a lot for me. It made a big difference for me.
There are two different aspects, but the one that I think I want to share with the group is I belong to an international labyrinth society, Veritas. And since the beginning of the pandemic, and it has been through Zoom, they do a Friday finger labyrinth walk. They alternate times because it's internationally. They have a lot of people that are in Africa or the United Kingdom or Australia, so we function. They're located in California. And it is amazing the connectedness that I personally feel in this hour of time where there are, and clearly they began with over 400 people being on a Zoom call, which was absolutely amazing to me, with a theme of the person leading it and the time of at 10 minutes of quiet or suitable quiet music playing in the background, that we have used handheld labyrinths to do quality interconnectedness time. And it just has been, and it's nothing they've ever done before, but the need arose. And what's amazing is that's only one small element that I know people are being so incredibly creative in what we used to do, particularly in a variety, but particularly spiritual ways, holistic ways, to connect with people when I never would have had an opportunity to sit in a meditation group with. So anybody that wants more, they can find out. I know Betty's done some of it on Friday afternoons, and it's free. I can just send you the information. Just send me an email and I'll be glad to send it to you.
I want that information. I think it's so funny because earlier this week, I think it was on Monday, I started thinking, I wonder if anybody's doing labyrinth walks online.
Yes,
Here I
there
get my answer.
There you go.
That's
Can
weird.
I send you my email address in this chat room? Does that work here?
Yes.
Okay, June, I'm going to send it to you right now. All right, I'm going to try to send it to you right now. If you get lost, okay,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
Jonathan,
You know Jonathan, though?
Jonathan
So
is
yeah.
telling us that he's not going to try to talk, but he says that podcasts have really helped him process and connect and have normalized his experience of pandemic fatigue, and has given me ideas for reconnection when I'm feeling disconnected. Brene Brown's episode, for example, on burnout, not work burnout, but pandemic burnout, is a gift. Yeah, she's great. So one thing that I have loved is that is the small group gathering, socially distanced outdoors. I think that for me, I find connection to the holy most significantly in outdoor spaces. And so those opportunities to be together in prayer and community, even for short periods of time, only with a few people, have been really significant to me in connecting to others and the holy. And one thing that I didn't realize I miss so much that you really lose on Zoom is the ability to lift prayer up together, as in like saying the Lord's Prayer together, or that kind of thing. The first time we gathered and did the outdoor evening prayer, I was tearing because I didn't realize how much I missed that. So
Yeah. I Daughters of the King had a Nehemiah prayer vigil posted on their national website. And I started doing that, and someone from Daughters connected with me, and we've been talking and praying the vigil. And then this morning she said, let's write a vigil for prayer before elections. So that's how we spent our time this morning. That was kind of fun and interesting. And the online Bible studies, and this, you know, I don't know what compelled me. I think it was the word connection. And I saw your video, and why not? You know, why not? You know, if I kept looking at it, gee, maybe, you know, there's a connection. So I'm glad I did this. And then
Too.
some of the racist work things that are going on, conversations online. And so I signed up for my work to do. And that's good. We got some really interesting information last night, but we're not supposed to be talking about what we get and what happens there. So that's, sign up for it if you're interested.
We're gonna have a lot of links to send out after this. Cassie, have you shared? Can I invite you or? Okay. How about
Well,
Terry?
I would say that, excuse me, it has occurred to me several times during the pandemic that this also brings to mind how God knows our needs before we have them. And, you know, the internet hasn't been around all that long. In the course of my lifetime, it doesn't seem that long. In the course of yours, it may seem like yesterday, but I mean, it may seem like all your life. Anyway, we do have all of this equipment and this media that's a possibility. Whereas in the 1912 flu, they were just isolated if they wanted to stay safe. We're just so lucky that we do have this, and it just never occurred to me it would be so important. It was just, you know, a novelty, something extra before, but it has been quite a connection for me. So I really love people. I really like them, and I really like to have lunch with them or whatever, coffee. And that's been hard for me, but I mean, the Zooms really help. We've had several family Zoom parties. In fact, our 50th anniversary party was on Zoom.
Oh, cool.
Except a lot of people forgot to come. And you couldn't talk privately. But anyway, okay, I'm off subject. You go ahead with whatever.
You know, one thing that I've been thinking about since, well, for the past hour, we started this off with 3 words. And I was trying to pay attention to what people were saying and the tone of their words. And it seemed like a lot of people were kind of fearful or anxious, but are also very hopeful that there is an end to this. And I think a lot of this is these kind of meetings, this Zoom meeting. We can share our feelings, and you know, there is a way that we can move through this and turn this isolation that we have now into a gift. I know for a long time I was so busy doing stuff, and now with this there is no more do. I've changed that to be. So now instead of do, I'm becoming me. Does that make any sense?
Sure.
Sure.
Yes.
You string that along enough, it's doobie doobie doo.
Yeah, if you string it along, it's doobie doo.
Do.
My daughter's really into Scooby Dooby Doo right now. Okay, I'm gonna read some comments from Jonathan just in case if people miss them. June, Jonathan is glad that you're here too. And Cassie, Jonathan thought your point was on point. He was saying earlier that his daughter Annie told me the other day, Dad, I'm older than Instagram. I never felt so old. That's what Jonathan never felt so old. Annie also apparently never felt so old either. And Terry, Jonathan said, Amen. Such a remarkable gift to be able to hold hope and fear together in one life. Yeah.
Cassie's comments
Yeah.
about her anniversary, her 50th anniversary, reminded me that this was my 50th anniversary of the graduation from college. And we had planned in Stanton, Virginia to have a wonderful reunion. And we thought, you know, we'd get together, we'd see one another and so forth. But of course, that didn't happen in April. And it was then again scheduled for this coming weekend. And of course, it's been canceled again. But in the interim, there have been 2, and there should be now 3 coming up on Friday, reunions by Zoom. And I suspect, as has happened in the past, that some of the people that showed up for the reunion online would not have come to Stanton, Virginia, because they either lived too far away or didn't have the wherewithal to get there. So in some sense, it's better that we've had these Zoom reunion meetings. And I'd also like to point out that, you know, I've been a little bit paranoid about this flu from the beginning because my grandmother died in 1919 from the Spanish flu, and Zoe Holmes was named for my grandmother. So I have this little bit of paranoia that goes on, but you know, just having the opportunity to be at home more and to have more time to really think about my spirituality, my connection to God has been a real blessing in a lot of senses.
Yeah, I don't go many places. 59 people where my husband works were tested positive with COVID, and in knowing that he could be carrying it and I could, and you know, the thought of like, I was a substitute aide at school and I haven't gone at all this year. They've called several times, but I'm just not answering the phone because, and plus my own system is compromised yet. So I got, and I hate that. I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm 65 and weaker than I used to be. And yet I find myself in these other groups encouraging people, there's still much that you can do. And so I'm thanking God for my writing skills and my education and these kinds of things. And but yeah.
June, I hope you will mark your calendar for every 3rd Wednesday of the month and come and join us repeatedly. I love your perspective. I love your energy. It's really, really welcoming, and I hope you'll return to us tenfold. I wanted to say one quick thing about where we are. I think we're forming the new norm. We're making new connections. And my analogy to this is, some of you know I had retina surgery years ago. And I went in this a couple of months ago for my annual to the retina specialist, and he announced to me, your eye's improving. Well, I can't tell the difference, folks, but I said, but it's 5 years ago. And he said, well, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for the connectedness to happen. And we don't tell people because it depends upon the body. Well, many strange way I'm looking at this aspect of my life. I think that we're all forming a new pattern, and I don't think that going off Zoom is somehow going to be incorporated. The richness of sharing in this way and the richness of sharing with people that we wouldn't have an opportunity on a basis to share can enter into a meeting room such as this and have a holy experience. So that's my little spiel.
Thank you, Jan. I agree.
We used to have neighborhood block parties. Maybe there should be neighborhood Zoom parties.
We're doing it right now. All right. Okay, so let us wrap up because we are at past time. And we usually wrap up with prayer in which we'll each say one word, and we'll do it the same way that we did kind of the, we can just do it the popcorn style. And so I will open us in prayer, and I will close us with just the word we all know and love, which is Amen. So let us pray. Dear God, you are our reason for connecting, and we give thanks that you created this space, these individuals, this world, and you called it good. And you called us to find that goodness as we come together. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this space. And may it allow us to find a little more peace, a little more grace, a little more holiness, and a lot more chaos in our lives as we go forward. And my word for today is neighbor.
That's what?
Neighbor.
Oh,
My word is peace.
Friend.
Gratitude.
Thankfulness.
Embrace.
go ahead. Grace, okay. A warm current.
Everybody?
Did we hear from Michael?
Sorry, mercy.
Mm.
And Jonathan said surrender and grace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Tell your
you.
friends.
Nice to see you guys. Love y'all.
We
So I
love you
can
guys.
invite
There.
people? Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
I love you,
Come
right?
back, June.
And June,
I will.
you got my address off the
I
chat?
did. And,
Okay.
and I will send you an email right away and you'll
Super.
recognize my name.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Where? how do
Jonathan,
you-
good luck with your internet.
Bye, guys.